Welcome to my session, More Power to Power Apps Portals, brought to you by Scottish Summit 2021. Special shout out to our sponsors. Without them, there would be no event. Sponsors such as Script Runner, DQ Global, Proximo 3, Redspire, Agilicis, and Hitachi Solutions. Welcome everybody. My name is Nick Doelman. I'm one of the trainers on 365.training. I'm also a Power Platform specialist. You can follow me on Twitter at ReadyXRM. And since 2017, I've been a member of the Microsoft Most Valuable Professional Program. And I'm also a competitive powerlifter. I've been lifting now for about 9 years, and I've competed in the 2018 and 2019 Canadian Powerlifting Championships, and I'm currently training to return to the platform in 2021. So let's talk a little bit about today's scenario, what we're going to be presenting as part of Power Apps Portals. So I think the best way to talk about Power Apps Portals is if we actually build a portal together. I can talk to you about the theory and all the components and those types of things, but really what's exciting is if we actually take some code and build something out. So here's my scenario. The Powerlifting Association that I'm currently a member of, they're a great group of people. However, their website, I think, was designed in the 1980s. It's a little bit old, a little bit rough around the edges. So I've taken it upon myself to redesign it, but using Power Apps Portals, because I think there's a lot of features that I can use to really enhance it, make it much more beneficial for the membership. So we're going to do things like we're going to see a listing of upcoming meets. We're going to be able to register for a meet. We're going to take a little bit about portal security, so only our members see member information, or meet directors only see the information they want to see, and be able to also take advantage of some of the newer technology such as Liquid and the portal's web API to update information to add that little extra power to Power Apps Portals. So very first thing, let's just dive right in and provision a Power Apps portal. So this might be some review for everybody to, if you've worked with portals. So just bear with me as we go through some of the basics as we kind of build up our foundation. Then we're going to dive into some more advanced stuff in the next 40-45 minutes. So I'm in make.powerapps.com, and this is your maker portal, is where you'll build model-driven apps, Canvas apps, and begin to expand out, maybe create some more tables to your Dataverse, those types of things. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and create a brand new portal from blank. So I'm just going to choose this. And what's going to happen is I'm going to need to give this some information. And what's going to happen with this provisioning process, it's going to install a bunch of managed solutions directly onto my Dataverse environment. It's also going to provision a portal in Azure that's going to talk to my Dataverse environment. And also it's going to install some tools and some metadata. So that metadata really is just data within Dataverse that describes our portal. So let's get going on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a name. I'm just going to call this Scottish Summit. And then I'm going to need to give it a URL. That URL has to be unique. So let's just see if Scottish Summit works. And we got it. Great. If it was not, I would just keep trying a few different variations. In a production portal, I could actually, load an SSL certificate and use my own vanity domain name. It's really easy. It goes beyond the scope of what we're talking about today, but for the most part, it is something that you can do as you're provisioning your Power Apps portal. And then we'll choose our language. If you speak a different language, you can choose a different base language. If you have multiple languages, then what you can do is you can provision multiple languages a little bit after the fact. Again, goes beyond the scope of today, but Power Apps portals do have the functionality to be multilingual. So let's just hit create. And now what's going to happen is that provisioning process is going to run. It's going to start loading those solutions, loading that portal metadata, getting that master portal set up in Azure, and a bunch of other things, and load those tools. Now this process can take anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour. So let's just skip ahead to when our portal is fully provisioned. So my portal's finished provisioning, and if I just I'm still in my make.powerapps.com. I'm going to go into my apps. We see here that we have provisioned our Scottish Summit portal, which is a type portal, And we've also got this portal management, which is a model-driven app. Now, I've also created, earlier, I created a powerlifting membership management, and I created that as a model-driven app. Now, I'm not going to go too deeply into how to build a model-driven Power App. I think there's other sessions, and you can find information about that online. Let's just take a quick look at that particular app. So I'm in my powerlifting management app, and I have a couple of things here. I have my membership section, which is my clubs, which are accounts, and I have my contacts. So very simple CRM type functionality, but I also have a listing of meets, which is a custom table that lists a whole bunch of meets that are coming up. Meets are like competitions, and another link here for registration. So all in all, I went through and modeled my data. I've created my model-driven app, and really this is the foundation. We can use a lot of this stuff for developing our Power Apps portal. So what I'm going to do, I'm back in the Maker portal, and here's my portal. So if I just open this up, this will launch my portal. Now this is accessible to anybody in the world, and it's just on a welcome screen. So the difference between provisioning a Power Apps portal and building like a Canvas app or a model-driven app, you actually get a fully functioning application. It's very simple. It's got some static content on here, whereas with a model-driven app or a Canvas app, you have to build it from scratch. So we do have this working portal, but what we want to do is actually configure it to fit our particular needs. So here in the Maker Studio, once again, I'm going to now go click on the ellipse, and I'm going to click on Edit. Now clicking on Edit launches something called the Portal Studio. Now I'm in the Portal Studio. We might get some messages, and this is like a trial portal, so I'm just going to close this. We might get some other information about updating solutions and things of that sort, but for now, this is our portal. We can begin to modify our portal here. So I can begin to change some of this text. And this is following the what you see is what you get interface, and we can begin to change some of the text and graphics on here. I'm going to create a brand new page. So I'm just going to go here, new page. I'm going to choose a layout. I'm just going to choose page with title. We're going to get into different layouts and templates that we can use in a few minutes. So here we have this page. It's created as it's called new page one. Of course, I rather created my own page. So I'm just going to just call this powerlifting. This is what our portal is going to be all about. That's the name of the page. So it's going to, by default, update the title. But of course, we could modify that title as well. And we would give this a partial URL. That partial URL is what will be part of the URL that gets forwarded when we're navigating to this particular page. However, we are going to be able to navigate this through a menu item, and I'll show you in a minute. I got a thing I can begin to now manipulate. I want to get rid of that sample text. And we have here something called the tool belt. And here is I can begin to put in other sections. So let's just start with a 2-column section. And we have these 2 columns here, and this will expand out as we begin to work with the portal. The first column, I'm going to choose that. I'm going to go back into my components, and I'm just going to put in some text. So there's some text here, and what I'll do is I'm just going to paste in some piece of text that I had from before. I'm just going to go here, and it's just some information about powerlifting. So I'm just going to paste that in here. And then the other column, now this is shifted because Power Apps portals are responsive, meaning they're going to respond to the size of your screen. So if I just decrease the resolution of my screen a little bit, notice that my column's now popped over to the right. On this side, I'm going to, instead of some text, I'm going to add an image. And we have an image here. Now we can choose from an existing image that is part of our portal, and there are some default images, or I can upload an image. And I'm just going to pick something. Pick one of my lifting pics. Let's pick this one. So I've loaded this up, and it's now it's actually stored, that image and that text is being stored as part of Dataverse as portal metadata. I'm just going to click on some white space because there is auto saving in the Portal Studio. And if I just want to see what this page looks like, I'm just going to browse directly to the website. And here I'm directly back in that portal. Notice a couple things. We see the text and everything there that I pasted in, the title. We have our image here. If we were to go back to the home page, and we do have this default menu, I'm going to go to the home. We have that home page. We see the edits we did, but we also notice we have this menu item automatically. As soon as we added a page, it added that menu item, and I can navigate back onto it. So I'm back in my Portal Studio here. If I wanted to remove it from the main menu, a couple things I could do. I could go here, and this gives me a little bit of a sitemap as it builds out pages. I could go in and I can hide in the default menu, and by hiding it, it means that the only way I can get to that page is through that URL. It won't be as part of the main menu, which might be okay depending on what we want to do. However, we can also create some other security with this as well. So I'm going to flip this back to show in the default menu. And we do see that we have in our properties pane off to the right here, we have permissions. And right now the page is available to everybody. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on here, and I need to select a role. Now, at this point, I'm not going to go too deep into Power Apps Portal security. That could be an hour-long conversation on its own. But for now, I'm just going to pick a role, and I'm going to pick authenticated users because that's a default role that's set up in my Power Apps Portal, meaning anybody who authenticates to the portal will be able to visit that page. So I've set this up, and we'll let this apply to child files. Those are files that are part of the hierarchy with the pages. And so now that this is saved, what we can do is if I go to browse the website now, I'm actually prompted for a login to sign in, because then this page no longer appears on my main menu because we've decided we only want authenticated users to log in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign in with a user that we can set up for authentication. Let's quickly recap how this is done. I'm back in my Maker portal. Remember when we first provisioned the portal, we had this portal management app. So I'm going to go into that, and that's where I can begin to work with a lot of that metadata. Now, before we talk about adding users, I just want to quickly recap what we've done so far and how it's reflected the metadata. If I go into my web pages, and again, you can tell this is a model-driven app. This is Dataverse data. We have this powerlifting web page. It's now been added. If I look at something like web files, we'll see here that I have my deadlift picture that's part of the powerlifting page. So that got uploaded as portal metadata. So you can see how all this information begins to build out our portal in the back end. What I want to do is go into our security, and authenticated users are equal to Dataverse contacts. So I'm going to go into the contacts here. And if I take a look at Jim, so I'm looking at Jim Glynn, his contact record in security in the portal management app. And of course, I could access his contact record in my powerlifting app as well, or whatever other model-driven app. It's the beauty of Dataverse. All the data is shared across different apps. I'm going to click on Create an Invitation. We're just going to stick with simple portal authentication right now. However, if this is a production portal, I would highly advise you to take a look at Azure B2C or some other third-party authentication just for security. I have the invite code here, and what I would normally do is just have a Power Automate flow send that portal invite to Jim Glynn directly. He would get it in his email, click on a link, and he would go back to the portal to basically cash in this invitation code. So back at the portal, we had that redeem invitation, or the login. I'm just going to go to the redeem invitation, paste in that code that he would have gotten an email. We'll just register. And that immediately takes me into setting up a new local account. I'm just going to call him Jim, give it a password, register. And then what I can do is I can complete the profile for Jim. Interesting, if I update the information here, so let's just say I do something like update his phone number from 555-0109 to 1234, for example, and I'll just update this on that page. This immediately is going to update that model-driven app, and we see now we have access to this particular page. And if I decide to sign out, it's going to take me back to the login. If I go home, we see that we're missing that particular link to that page. So already we'll be able to see how some of the security works based on the authenticated user and specific what we call web roles. Now, everything I've showed you up until this point, you're probably thinking, hey, I could do that in WordPress or some other content management system, or even for that matter, you could have created some HTML pages in Notepad, which you're absolutely right, you totally could. But what I want to do now, I'm back into my model-driven app for my powerlifting membership management app. And I have a list of meets here. These are the upcoming competitions. I'm going to want to post those to a particular web page. Now, a lot of times I've seen customers do this. They'll dump out this information, they'll give it to their web folks. The web folks will clean it up and then they'll post it up on their website. Well, which is great, but then of course, if the things, information updates, the dates change, then they have to kind of go through that process all over again. So there's got to be a better way, and there is using Power Apps portals. So once again, I'm back on my Portal Studio. I'm in the home page. Again, I'm going to create a page, again, fixed layout. I'm just going to use page with title for simplicity. And we have our new page. So we've just done this before, but I'm just going to call this upcoming contests. Let's say contests, my partial URL. And this is where the true power of Power Apps portals comes in. So now I'm going to once again delete the text. I'm going to insert a component. I'm going to choose a one column section this time around. I'm going to go into that column. And here in my components, I'm going to choose a list. So put that list component in. And now I have a couple more options. I need to give this list component a name in the property. So I'm just going to call this contests. And now I'm going to pick my Dataverse table. So I'm going to choose the table. I'm going to find meets. So there's the meet. And we have a list of views here. So I'm just going to pick the active meets, and I can pick multiple. We can choose the different views and just leave that for now. Maybe it will show more than 10 records. We can adjust this too. So let's say we're going to show 20. And maybe we'll just enable the search. We're not going to worry about table permissions just yet. I'm going to tab off this. Tapping off, it's going to save. And now let's browse to our website. And already we're beginning to see the headings are coming in. I'm going to go browse to the website. And we see here that we have a list of those upcoming contests in a nice, formatted table with the information and things like that. So that just took like 3 clicks, and we're surfacing data from Dataverse onto a publicly facing Power Apps portal page. So that's one of the the powers of the portal, is so easy to show information from Dataverse. What's cool about this is every time this information will get updated in the model-driven app, this is going to reflect on this particular portal page. And we can do more with this. We can actually begin to drill down and get some details. So for example, if I wanted more details on a particular event, I'm going to be able to configure my portal further to show that. So once again, I'm in my Portal Studio. I'm going to click another page again, just going to pick a page with title. And once again, we're going to go through and fill in the details for this page. So what I've done, I've created the page, I've given it a name, and I've added a column here. What I'm going to do is going to add a component, and this time I'm going to choose form. And actually, I needed to actually select my column. So let me actually try that again. Add my form there, and I'm going to get rid of this one. So there, I have my form in that column, and then I'm going to put the properties of that form, and I can fill in the some extra details. So I'm just going to call that contest details. Again, we need to pick our particular table, and here I'm going to have a form layout. So here I can create different form layouts, and I would go into my model-driven, the regular Power App Maker portal, and build out those forms the same as I would when I'm designing a model-driven app. And I could actually go there if I click on that edit form. For now, we're just going to choose ones I have already. I'm just going to pick this as an edit form, so we can go in and make changes, and we can put some things like success settings. For now, I'm going to actually redirect back to the contest, upcoming contest pages. So again, I can configure this all within the Portal Studio. So if you've worked with portals before and had to go around with the metadata to configure this is a lot easier now with these tools. This is here. And now the thing is, what we're going to need to do, it doesn't know what record to show. So if I went and browsed the website directly now, I'm going to get an error message. The record you're looking for couldn't be found because I need to pass it a GUID. So I need to go back to my Portal Studio. So in my Portal Studio, I'm going to go into my upcoming contest page. So I'm actually here on back in my Portal Studio on the list component. From that list component, I'm going to choose view details, and I'm going to pick the web page, and I'm going to pick contest details. So it's going to know what to drill down to. We'll just tab off to save this, and let's browse. So now that I'm here, I see that I have a hyperlink, so I can drill down into the information. So if I just click on here, what this is going to do is drill down to the detail record. And because I have this as edit, I probably wouldn't do this in a live site, obviously. But what I could do is I can update and edit that record. It does have some CAPTCHA information in here. I can always shut that off. So this way I can actually add information and update my Dataverse directly. So there's additional security I can set up. I can use what's called entity permissions, or what we also call, what's probably going to be renamed to table permissions. So I can view based only on the currently logged in user. So maybe Jim can only see the meets that he's the beat director for. And this could be filtered. So security is another one of those big things that probably take me about an hour to talk about. But I want to talk about some extra things we can do to the portal to add more power to those portals. So first off, if I'm looking at these records, a couple things. First off, this works. It's very functional, but it's a grid type layout. It's a little, very system. We might want to kind of jazz this up a little bit, make it a little bit more readable. The other thing too is I can only drill down into that particular record. If I wanted to drill down on the host club, there currently is no way I can configure my list component to drill down into other lookups, much that we could do in a regular model-driven app. So how do we do that? Well, here's where the power of portals, where we can extend it further using different techniques. So if we look at this page, yeah, it is very utility based. So what could we do to make this look a little bit better? So I designed a page. Now I do want to let people know, I'm just going to click here. This is the page that I designed, and I'm not a designer. I'm probably more of a citizen designer and not a very good one at that. But you can see here I have changed the background color. I've added an announcement to the particular page. I still have my breadcrumbs. I can now drill down into my contest. So there's the contest. I can drill down into that, and that will take me into my contest details, the same as before. And I can always just go back and see my date has now been formatted a little bit more cleaner. And I can also drill down into my host club. So I can drill down into that and see the information about the host club as well. And there's a registration link, and the currency is neatly formatted as well. So, and I can scroll down and I can begin to see that I have all my other information there, kind of in a nicer digest format. So someone who's really good at CSS and designing could probably make this look way nicer than I can, but you get the idea that we can begin to modify this. So how do we do this in Power Apps portals? So what we're going to do is take a look at Liquid and creating web templates. So once again, in my portal management app, take a look at content snippets. Remember we had that announcement. So I could, hard code that in directly on the page, but if we wanted to update this regularly, it would be a little bit confusing for someone who might not be a developer and might not be, used to creating the hard code. So there, what I've done is I've created a content snippet. So I can scroll down, here's announcements. And by creating that content snippet, I give it a name, and I can put in this information here. And I could just have someone come in and update those content snippets, or give them, maybe even build a Canvas app that they could update those content snippets very easily. So we're going to take a look at this. So remember that content snippets. The other thing is site markers. So site markers are really pointers to web pages. So remember we were able to drill down into the host club. So here I have a site marker called host club, and it's linked to a page. That page has an entity form on it, or a form component showing that host club information. We have a couple more site markers, one going to the meet details and another one going to the registration as well. So we've created some site markers there. So we've begun to piece these things together. So now let's quickly take a look at Liquid. So we talk about Liquid markup language. What it is, it's an open source markup language. It's meant to dynamically show content. And what we can do with that Liquid, we can place it in any content area. So we did take a look already at content snippets. We could place Liquid in those content snippet areas. We can mix this with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, so we can begin to hide and show. Now the key thing is this runs on the server side. What that means is that Liquid code is going to be interpreted, and it's going to spit out HTML code that's going to be on the client side. So if we were to take a look at the code in the client browser, we would never see any Liquid there because it's going to be interpreted on the server side. Because of that, it's really read-only execution. We can't change the content on a page with Liquid. We can with JavaScript and with CSS and other ways, but Liquid itself is interpreted on the server side. And it is the foundation for web templates. So we're going to take a look at creating our own web templates, and we're going to see a lot of Liquid code there. So I've created a web template called Meet Information, and I've begun to paste in some code, and we're going to go through that. First thing you're going to notice is extending layout columns. So within Liquid, that's very easy. You'll see squigglies and percent or double squigglies, and we'll take a look at that. And the first thing we're doing is we're extending layout one column. Liquid web templates build on top of each other, so you can begin to reuse a lot of code and build a structure. So if I were to take a look at layout one column, we see layout one column web template. It's basically being broken out into different containers and divs. We're including, breadcrumbs, the title, and the main, the page copy. So we're beginning to build out that structure, and be building that, we're going to be able to keep a level of consistency across our portal if we're using sort of the same structures on that. So let's drill down a little bit further into our own web template. So we've created this web template within our portal management app. What I want to do is have this available to edit directly in the Portal Studio. To do that, I need to create a page template, and we have this page template already created. The reason why we have page templates and web templates is basically it's a pointer structure. The page template could point to an ASPX page. This was kind of a throwback to the old ADX Studio days where, we were on using our own servers, and we could create our own ASPX templates. We can no longer do that with the online portal, so we have to point to web templates, but there are some legacy pages that are still pointing to some of those out-of-the-box ASPX templates. So don't get too hung up on that. We do have to create that page template, and then once we do, we're going to be able to edit our template directly in the Portal Studio. So I'm in the Portal Studio now, and I've gone into the code editor, went into templates. Web templates have to have everything within a block, so we have that block main, so we have an end main at the bottom. We see our end block there, so we have everything in between. And then we have some CSS here, so you can see I've just plugged in some regular styling. Again, like I said, I'm not a designer, so someone could make this look a little bit better, but I've added some classes to my headings and my paragraph, and to a few other parts that are within my particular page. Now I'm going to scroll down a little bit further. We have some containers and divs set up again, very much like a typical page template that you would create in a content management system, with the different containers and blocks and columns. This is based on Bootstrap as well, so if anybody's familiar with that, that is the sort of the backend framework that's being used. We see here we have some our Liquid tag. We have an example of content snippets, so we have our announcements here. It's using that snippet, so that's going to appear on the page. And if I change that announcement in the content snippet, that will be reflected on the page, and I don't have to touch the template at all. We also are establishing our site markers. So our site markers are here to our meet details, our host club, our register. These are just setting up variables to those site markers. And again, so those pages, by being site markers, those pages could move around in the hierarchy, so we don't have to hard code URLs. That's effectively why we want to use site markers. We don't want to hard code anything into our web template. The next section is pretty interesting. It's using a language called FetchXML. If you're not familiar with FetchXML, it is a querying language for Dataverse. It's used quite a bit in software development for creating plugins and other extensions. There are other ways to get data as well. It's also used heavily in SQL Server reporting services reports. And a great way to generate FetchXML is you can do it from the advanced find within a Dataverse model-driven app, but there is the XRM toolbox, there is the FetchXML builder. I'd highly recommend that you would use that to generate your FetchXML statement. And all I'm doing here is just retrieving that meet information, very similar to what we would have used for that list component. I'm calling that out in fetch. It's saving that to an object. Now the next thing we're going to do is using Liquid. Again, we're going to go through those meet results. As long as they're over 0, it's going to go through using a for loop and go through each of those meet results. It's going to inject that href, that clickable link. Again, using the site marker, we are passing it the ID. It is able to pull those parameters from our objects into our code. We have the name here. So we have our hyperlink, we have our start time. It's being piped through a date object, so we can format it a certain way. We have some other information here with the URL to our host club. So we're able to have those drill downs into multiple records. That's something we can't do in the list component. I'm just showing the description of that particular meet, and we're having again another site marker to the registration. Notice here again, I'm piping that registration fee through a particular format, a currency format. So again, this is again using Liquid, and we're able to interpret that. And then once we have this template used, then what I'm going to do is, of course, I can save it. I can't create templates within the Portal Studio, but I can edit them at this time. If I was to take a look at my meet listing web page, I created this page earlier following the same procedures. But what I did instead was I chose that meet listing template as the base. By choosing that as the base, it basically is formatting that page that way with that light blue background and the dark colors and, that kind of ugly page that I created. Now, the other thing that I want to make you aware of is to show this information, we do need to set up some security within our portal management app. So back in our portal management app, I did create that entity permission. We will need that. I've just set it to the scope of global, but with the different scopes, we can base it on the type of user that's viewing that data. So this is a way we can filter out data to only be visible to certain members. And I'm just giving it read privileges, meaning we could read that data. And what I do need to do is relate that to a web role. Now, the web roles I have it related are the ones that come out of the box, the anonymous user and the authenticated users. Basically, I want everyone to see it. Now, I can create my own custom web roles and associate those with specific table or rather entity permissions. And this is going to create a bit of a matrix on how security works within Power Apps portals. We can establish a hierarchy with this as well, relating to accounts and contacts. Portal security does get very complicated, and like I said, I could probably talk for a couple hours specifically on that, but I know that's a question that commonly comes up with Power Apps portals is, can this be secured? The short answer is yes. We can set up security that information is protected. And then of course, once we actually go to our page using that particular template, we're able to go through. And then again, we could actually do more and configure this template however we want. And we can create our own set of templates for Power Apps portals. And that's typically for folks that do a lot of customization with portals. They'll create their own specific set of web templates to fit with the format, the layout, the power that they want with their Power Apps portals. So let's talk about a few other ways we can enhance our portal a little bit. I have another page here called registrations, and what typically happens in powerlifting meets, after the contest is over, the meet director has to go in and update a bunch of information and submit it to a centralized database. Now, if we did this on the portal, a little bit easier. So I have my list of registrations here, and I have a list of all the competitors. And so what I'm going to do is I can go into a particular record. Same as before, this is a standard list component, and this is using a form component. It's a pop-up, and I can begin to fill in information about this, the results. And it definitely works. It might just be I can go and fill this information, hit submit, click, and it goes back, and I'm back to my list again. I have to go in and click. So one click, and then I fill in the information. And as you can tell, this could potentially become to be a little bit tedious over time. Click and back again. So it's not too bad, but sometimes we want to make this a little bit easier. It'd be easier if I could fill this in very much like an Excel sheet or a grid. So thankfully, with the new web API, we're able to do that and kind of learning about some of the techniques that we did earlier in creating our own web template. So the first thing I'm going to do is, as opposed to generating a lot of the snippets and things that I need to do for the web API, and you can look on the doc site on how to configure this, I actually prefer to use a tool. There's a tool in the XRM toolbox called the Power Portal Web API Helper. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to load the entities from my Dataverse environment. And here I'm going to pick my registration. And I'm going to specify, I'm going to first off enable it for Web API. And then I'm going to put in the values that I want to update. So my deadlift and my bench, basically save my changes. And it's going to update those site settings for me. And we're going to take a look at those. I've updated those. That's great. And then I'm going to generate the snippet. So now it's generated some of my code that I need for using the web API. So I don't need to actually type in a lot of this stuff. So here in my portal management app, I'm going to take a look at some site settings. Site settings are very much like sort of your registry for configuring specific portal settings. And if I look here into my web API, notice now I have my registration entity enabled. And that's something I'm going to need to do, turn this on in order to be able to use the web API with this particular site setting. And I also need to specify the fields. So I've specified which fields are available. This basically means that I'm able to utilize the web API. If not, the web API would be blocked out. So it's more of a security issue more than anything. And that's why we need to set up these particular site settings. We're also going to need to set up entity permissions for that entity as well. So let's just go ahead and do that. And the difference is I'm going to make sure we have write. We don't need to create or any of the others. So we have the read and the write. We need to make sure those are set. So those are set. And again, I'm going to relate that to a web role. Again, we can specify custom web roles, but now I'm just going to choose my anonymous and authenticated users, ones out of the box, just to keep this simple. We'll save and close this. So the other thing I'm going to do from the web API tool, I'm going to grab the wrapper function. We're going to need this, so I'm just going to copy it, and I'm going to create my own specialized web template for it. So basically I pasted in that particular code. I am going to need to put that within script tags because effectively this is JavaScript. Let me just do an end script here. We'll save this. And we're going to be using, basically pointing back to this particular web template. And again, web templates could be HTML, JavaScript, CSS, or of course, Liquid. So I've created that template here. And again, I'm going to need to create a corresponding page template. So I've created my page template. So that means I should be able to see that in my Portal Studio. So I'm in my Portal Studio. I've brought up my new page template. Again, I'm extending the layout one column, utilizing that. I put my things in blocks. I am including the Portal Web API Ajax. So there's that helper class. And so I don't have to keep pasting that in all the time. I'm including that, so it should be there. Again, regular div class, breaking things out. Once again, we have a fetch XML. From that fetch XML, we are reading that information. Again, that's going to be interpreted on the server. So we're going to read that information and send it back. And we're also going to be pulling the ID as well, because we're going to need that GUID to write back to our Portal API, through the web API in the portal. So I'm going to go through, parcel those results, basically the same as before. This time I'm going to display it in an actual HTML table. There's the headings. I have my registration, my squat, bench, deadlift. And through here on my each table row, I'm going to add some input number tags here. So I'm going to input I'm setting the ID. I'm tying that to the GUID of the record that I'm going to be updating. We're also showing things here, the other information, just displaying that in that table. And at the end, I'm putting a button. I'm putting a regular input type button, HTML, but this time I'm going to be calling the JavaScript function. I'm going to be passing it the GUID of the particular record I'm on, along with the values that I'm filling in on this grid. I know there's a lot of code here. My code is up on GitHub. I'm going to have that link at the end of this presentation, so you'll be able to grab that. So basically I've created that HTML table, I'm going through, and then finally I have this JavaScript function. This JavaScript function, of course, is taking the GUID, those different values, and it's going to create a data object. So basically creating that data object, I need to do a parse float because they're numbers. And then with that data object, I am going to use the patch command. I am patching it to this URL, this API that's generated as part of the web API, and using JSON stringifying that data object and sending it off. And it's going to basically call the web API directly. On this particular code, I don't have any kickback. Normally what I would do is I'd sort of wait for a response from the server just to verify that the data was updated. And if it wasn't, display some kind of error message. But for now, I'm really just showing it's just basically the basics of how this works. So let's set up a page in using this particular template. So here I actually have my page. I'm using that template, the update registrations. Let's take a look on the website. And here, this looks a little bit better. I can actually now just sort of type in the different values without having to click over to a different site altogether. And I could just hit my save. And if we look in my model-driven app, we can actually see the values have been updated. So we know the web API is working. So basically a lot of interesting stuff here. We talked about liquid templates. We talked about the new Portal Web API. I know there's another couple sessions throughout the Scottish Summit that drill down into these particular areas a little bit further, but hopefully you're able to understand a bit of how you can get more power to Power Apps portals. And as promised, here is a link to my GitHub that has the code used in that presentation. So take a look at that code. Hopefully it makes sense to you. If you want, you can definitely do a pull request if you want to clean it up, make it a little bit better, make that design look a little bit better. But if you have any questions, definitely reach out to me, and hopefully I can help you out in your own portal projects if you have any questions. So now let's, I think we have some time. Let's actually turn it over, see if anybody has any questions from the crowd.